I caught my breath as I froze in the doorway of our living room. The scene before me was one no mother should ever have to witness. My husband, Franklin, stood far too close to my daughter's fiancé, Michael Bennett. Michael's hand lingered against Franklin's arm in a way that sent shockwaves down my spine. Their laughter was too intimate, their eyes locking for a second too long. It was only 3 hours before my daughter Rachel's engagement party, and I was watching my husband with the man who was supposed to marry her. My throat went dry. I wanted to scream, to rush in and demand answers, but before I could move, something else happened that made my knees buckle. From the hallway, my daughter's voice cut through the silence. "Mom, I already know." "And it's worse than you think." That was the first climax. The second came only seconds later, when Rachel, my sweet girl, stepped out of the shadows with tears running down her face. She wasn't just crying. She was clutching a folded piece of paper in her trembling hand. "Don't confront them yet," she whispered urgently, her voice cracking. "You don't know everything." And in that moment, I realized I wasn't the only one carrying suspicions. My daughter knew. She had proof. Before I take you deeper into this story, hi, I'm Simone, and I want to know something from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments. I love seeing how our community stretches across the U.S. and beyond. Just that morning, I had been full of nervous excitement. I woke before dawn in our family home in Savannah, Georgia, staring out at the magnolia trees lining our quiet street. Rachel's engagement party at the Savannah Yacht Club was supposed to be a day of joy, a celebration of love and family. I had spent weeks planning the details, the shrimp and grits appetizer, the string quartet rehearsing on the lawn, the white tents strung with fairy lights that would glow against the river at dusk. Everything had to be perfect. Rachel was my only daughter, and Michael was supposed to be the man of her dreams. But Franklin had been different lately. Distant, distracted. The kind of distracted that no amount of polite questions or careful dinners could hide. He spent hours locked away on phone calls, muttering about business meetings in Charleston or late nights at the office. At first, I brushed it aside. We had been married for 27 years, long enough to ride through storms. But last night, when Franklin didn't come home until nearly midnight, his shirt collar smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his, I felt that dread settle deep in my chest. And now, here it was. Confirmation, in the cruelest possible way. I stood frozen, hidden just beyond the frame of the doorway. My eyes flicked to Rachel. She was pale, her curls pulled back but disheveled as if she had been tugging at them in frustration. The paper in her hand shook as she held it out to me. "Don't say anything yet, Mom," she whispered. "I hired someone." I needed proof. My stomach lurched. "What do you mean, you hired someone?" She shook her head. "I'll explain later. Just trust me. If you confront them now, they'll deny it. They'll twist it. I need you to see what I've seen." I looked from her stricken face to the laughter still drifting from the living room. Franklin poured Michael a drink, the clink of the glasses mocking me. Rachel gripped my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. Her voice dropped lower, urgent, almost desperate. "It's not just Dad, Mom. Michael, he's hiding something else. Something bigger. If we expose them the wrong way, we lose everything." Her words chilled me to the bone. Betrayal was one thing, but this sounded like a web of lies we hadn't even begun to unravel. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to steady my shaking hands. My entire life, my marriage, my daughter's future, suddenly hung in a fragile balance. If what Rachel was saying was true, this was about more than an affair. The engagement party guests would begin arriving in only a few hours. Judges, lawyers, church friends, neighbors, everyone who mattered in our community. And there, under the fairy lights and music, my family's secrets threatened to explode. I looked back at Rachel, her eyes red but burning with determination. "Mama," she said firmly, "this party isn't going to end the way they think it will." Her words rang like a promise, a warning, and just like that, I knew. Tonight would not just be a celebration. It would be the stage for a reckoning. I stared at Rachel, stunned, clutching that folded piece of paper she had pressed into my hand. My daughter's engagement party was only hours away, and she was telling me that the betrayal ran deeper than I could imagine. But what was on that paper? And how could my daughter possibly know more than I did about the man I'd shared my life with for nearly 3 decades? Rachel closed my fingers around the folded paper like it was a detonator. "Not here," she whispered. From the living room, I heard Franklin's smooth laugh, polished, familiar, suddenly foreign, and Michael's softer chuckle answering it. The clink of ice and crystal felt obscene. We slipped into my home office just off the foyer. Morning light fell across the desk where I kept client binders for my bookkeeping side work, each tabbed and neat, order I could control. Rachel shut the door, flipped the brass lock, and drew the blinds until the room dimmed to a cool hush. She spread the paper flat. It wasn't a single page. It was a timeline. Names, dates, places, Savannah, Charleston, Atlanta, and beside each line, short notes, text thread, statement, hotel log, transfer. At the top, a name I didn't recognize, Whitaker Investigations. "You hired a private investigator?" I asked, my voice barely a breath. Rachel nodded, jaw tight. 3 weeks ago, after Dad started mentoring Michael more closely, and my phone started buzzing with odd hours and half-truths. She swallowed. I needed to know if my gut was crazy or if my gut was trying to save me. She unlocked her phone, tapped open a secure folder, and turned the screen toward me. Photo 1. Franklin and Michael on the terrace of the Dewberry in Charleston, midweek, late afternoon. Not a business handshake, an intimacy in their posture, an orbit you don't fake. Photo 2. A dark parking garage near Drayton Tower here in Savannah. 2 silhouettes closer than explanations would allow. Photo 3. A text thread between Michael and a contact saved as F. Short messages, carefully neutral, time-stamped after midnight, set to self-delete. The investigator had pulled screenshots through a legal device mirror Michael had carelessly left authenticated on a shared iPad at his apartment. My stomach turned. Rachel clicked to bank statement, Michael Bennett trust checking. Look, a dozen transfers of $750 to $1,500 labeled consulting, routed to a Shell LLC, Harborview Development Partners, registered in Delaware under a mail drop. Then she opened another document, wire confirmation from Franklin's brokerage, loan against 401k, the same day as 2 consulting payments out of Michael's account. Dad was moving money, she said, and Michael was moving money. Sometimes the same day, not giant wires, enough to hide in the noise. The PI found the LLC traces back to a prepaid business service. No real project, no permits, no property records. Just a drain. I sat back, palms cold. Why? Rachel's eyes glistened. Because fraud feels safer than telling the truth, and because Michael wanted leverage, not just a wedding, a ladder. She swiped again. Audio, 10:12 p.m., River Street, recorded from a parabolic mic down by the steps near the Waving Girl statue. The voices were faint but distinct. The low timbre of Franklin, the careful cadence of Michael. Franklin. You're asking me to move faster than is reasonable. Michael. I'm asking you to prove I'm not wasting my future on you. A silence, then Franklin's brittle laugh. You think you're the only person who knows how to play a room? Michael. I think your wife knows more than you realize. Rachel paused the audio. That was 2 nights ago. A tremor ran through my hands. He talked about me to him. It shouldn't have been the worst part, not amid lies and money, but somehow it was. The casual erasure of the woman who had set the table, built the home, held the family steady through hurricanes literal and figurative. Rachel slid another page forward. Hotel guest services log, the Elida, a quiet boutique spot by the river. 2 room service orders logged within minutes of each other, both charged to Franklin's card and signed BA note in the PI's margin. Signature variants suggest non-card holder. It wasn't salacious, just damning. I didn't want to believe any of it, Rachel whispered. So Asha, the investigator, suggested we test for patterns. If it's a one-off, the data won't form a line. If it's a lie, it always forms a line. Whose number is this? I asked, pointing at a contact labeled R.E. Ryan Ellison, she said. Assistant DA in Chatham County. I went to high school with his sister. I didn't show him everything, just asked hypotheticals. What's a crime? What's just heartbreak? She exhaled. Forged signatures on retirement loans, crime. Shell company siphons, potential crime. Using privileged firm funds, if it touches Michael's cases. A crime. I stared at my daughter, my child who used to fall asleep on my shoulder in the pew at St. Mark's, who had once cried when a neighbor's cat went missing. Now, she was battle calm, briefing me like a seasoned attorney. You did this alone? I asked. Her lips trembled. I tried to tell you, Mama. Then I watched you set out little candles for the party, and I couldn't break your heart without a plan to put it back together. Somewhere in the house, Franklin's voice grew closer, moving toward the foyer. Rachel's eyes flicked to the door. She lowered her voice to a thread. We can't confront them early. They'll deny, gaslight, regroup. We need undeniable receipts in the right room, at the right time, in front of the right people. The party, I said. The word tasted like metal. She nodded. I've already swapped the slideshow laptop feed. The Savannah Yacht Club ballroom has a projector. People will expect baby photos and toasts. We'll give them the truth. I felt a jolt of fear. Rachel, public humiliation? Are you ready for what that means? For you? She set her jaw. What I'm not ready for is to promise forever to a man who is building it on lies. And I'm not ready to watch you sit through another speech from a husband who thinks you don't see him clearly. She tapped another file labeled, The Bigger Thing. There's more, Mama. The part that made me say, worse than you think. It isn't just the money. She held my gaze. It's power. Rachel opened an email capture, Michael to Franklin with the subject contingency. Inside, no text, only an attachment image of a draft complaint addressed to the Georgia State Bar, alleging potential financial irregularities in Franklin's past firm, Atlantic Shore Realty Group, and a CC'd draft memo to Franklin's current employers board. The accusations were thin, speculative, but the timing note at the bottom wasn't to be sent if engagement is impeded. He's been keeping a lever on Dad, Rachel said, voice flat. If Dad backed out of helping him climb, Michael planned to blow smoke at his career, cause an investigation, ruin him by rumor. She swallowed. So Dad paid, stalled, lied. Not just for love, if that's what he'd call it. For survival. My mouth went dry. The betrayal wasn't just intimate, it was strategic. A transaction with my family as collateral. Rachel. I reached for her hand. We expose this right. We don't just end a party. We start a war, a knock, 2 knuckles, familiar rhythm. Franklin. My pulse jumped. You ladies in there? His voice was easy, Sunday smooth. Michael's headed out to meet the florist at the club. Thought we could all ride over together in a bit. Rachel's eyes locked with mine. She mouthed, Do not react. She swiped her phone dark, slid the papers back into a manila folder, and stacked it beneath my tax binders. She cracked the door. "Hey, Dad," she said, and the steadiness of her tone startled me. "Big day." Franklin stepped into the doorway, hands in pockets, tie loosened just so, a man playing reliable. "You look beautiful, Rach," he said. Then to me, the practiced smile. "You okay?" You went quiet on us. "I'm fine," I said, and I was shocked to hear that it sounded almost true. "Just finalizing place cards." My hand rested on the folder. The weight of it steadied me. He glanced at my desk like he always did, curious, nosy, accustomed to entering my spaces without asking. I moved my hand casually, and his gaze drifted. "All right," he said. "Let's not be late to our own party." When he left, Rachel let out the breath she'd been holding. "We don't have much time," she whispered. "There's one more piece we need, something to make this undeniable even if they scream fake." "What?" I asked. "An admission," she said. "We won't get it from them, but we can get it from someone else who's been watching the same pattern." She picked up her phone. I called Aunt Asha. "Asha?" "My sister, the retired cop who never suffered fools, who read a room in under 10 seconds. She's been running a quiet side check since I hired the PI," Rachel said. "Dad's retirement loans, she wants to put eyes on the originals at the bank. And, Mama," Rachel hesitated, then continued, "Asha thinks we should verify signatures and pull camera logs. If the bank gives us access, we'll know whether a certain signature is yours or not." A cool, clean anger settled over me. The old me would have begged for this to be a misunderstanding. The woman standing in that office wanted the truth down to the millimeter. "We meet her in 30 minutes, Rachel said. "Forsyth Park, by the fountain." Low profile, I straightened the stack of binders, slid the manila folder into my tote, and checked my reflection in the office window. Same face, different woman. We walked down the hall. As we passed the living room, Michael looked up from the couch, phone in hand, lips curving into a smile that never reached his eyes. "You two ready to toast the future?" he said lightly. Rachel didn't miss a beat. "More than you know." Outside, the savannah air wrapped around us, warm and heavy with the smell of river and gardenias. We drove along Victory Drive, palmettos brushing the sky, neither of us speaking, the city gliding by in familiar lines that suddenly felt like a map to a battleground. At Forsyth, the fountain's spray caught the light, wedding photographers already jockeying for angles across the green. Asha was waiting on a bench under a live oak, sunglasses, baseball cap, posture loose enough to blend, alert enough to pounce. She stood when she saw us and opened her arms. "My girls," she said, voice low. "I've got you." She sat us down and slid a slim folder across. "Quick hits," she murmured. "Signature comparisons suggest 2 of the 4 01k loan forms weren't signed by you. Camera logs from the Bull Street branch show Franklin entering a loan, meeting with a junior rep. That rep told a friend, who told me. Franklin said you'd sign later and needed the funds for a surprise." Asha's mouth tightened. "The surprise appears to have been bills someone else incurred." I stared at the stills. Franklin at a teller window, shoulders squared, a man at home in every lobby. "Will this hold up?" "Enough for a conversation you want to have," Asha said. "And enough to make a room go silent when you push play." Rachel leaned forward. "We have the projector at the club ready. But I want one more thing, Auntie. Something beyond paper. Something no one in that room can argue with." Asha's eyes glinted. "Already in motion." She tapped her phone. I traced the Harborview shell. It intersects with a firm where Michael clerked, Lowndes and Rowe, and a paralegal named Kara Mills, who's been quietly logging after-hours invoice edits. She tilted her head. "She's mad he took credit for her work, and she's bringing me a thumb drive." "When?" I asked. Asha's smile was thin and sure. She's walking up now. We turned. A young woman in a gray blazer crossed the path, clutching a coffee like a shield. She hesitated, scanning the park, then fixed on Asha and exhaled. "You're the friend?" she asked, relief loosening her shoulders. "You said there would be protection." "There will," Asha said softly, standing. "Do you have it?" Kara nodded, slipped a small black drive from her pocket, and pressed it into Asha's palm. "He thinks he's clever," she said, voice shaking. "But he leaves edits in metadata, timestamps, usernames. He's been routing client funds to Harborview for months, calling it third-party review." Rachel's hand found mine. The fountain thundered. Somewhere a child laughed. The world went on, absurdly normal. Asha pocketed the drive and glanced at her watch. "We need to move," she said. "Get this loaded. Get your run of show tight. The right slide at the right second, the right silence before the next blow." I stood. The woman who came to this park had questions. The one who left had a plan. As we turned toward the car, my phone buzzed. "Franklin. Club needs the toast order final in 15. Where are you?" I typed back. "With Rachel." On our way, my thumb hovered, then added, "We'll be right on time." Because we would. We would be exactly devastatingly on time. By sunset at the Savannah Yacht Club, the string quartet would tune, the fairy lights would glow, and a ballroom full of friends would lift glasses for a toast. But on our laptop sat a new slideshow, not baby photos, but receipts. And in Asha's pocket, a thumb drive that could turn whispers into evidence. What would you reveal first if you were us? Money trail, messages, or the leverage email? Tell me in the comments which card you'd play first to stop every excuse in its tracks. We sat in the car outside Forsyth Park, the fountain spraying white arcs into the sunlight. Rachel clutched the folder against her chest, while Aunt Asha scrolled grimly through the files Kara Mills had just delivered on her thumb drive. My mind was spinning, but it wasn't just the forged signatures or the shady shell company eating at me. It was the images, the ones I couldn't erase. Franklin and Michael, their closeness, their quiet laughter that sounded like secrets. For nearly 3 decades, Franklin had been my husband. The man who slipped me magnolias on our anniversary, who coached Little League when Elijah was still in braces, who sang too loudly during Christmas Eve service. And yet, here was a side of him I had never seen, never even imagined. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. "All these years," I whispered, "I thought I knew him. I thought I knew what he wanted, who he wanted." Rachel placed a gentle hand over mine. Her eyes were full of hurt, but also compassion. "Mama," she said softly, "this isn't about who Dad is drawn to. It's about the lies he built around it, the secrets, the betrayal." I nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in my throat. She was right. It wasn't the attraction itself that broke me. It was the deception. Franklin hadn't trusted me with the truth. Instead, he had buried it under 27 years of half-smiles and excuses, dragging our daughter's future into his web. Asha leaned back in the passenger seat, her voice low and steady. "It happens more often than you think. People hiding who they are. But Franklin didn't just hide. He used it. He leveraged Michael. He let himself be leveraged back. That's not love. That's strategy. And it's dangerous, dangerous." The word sat heavy between us. I stared through the windshield at the families walking the park paths, their children skipping ahead, their lives seemingly simple. My life looked simple from the outside, too. A devoted wife, a proud mother, a stable home in Savannah, Georgia. But inside, it was crumbling. I turned back to Asha and Rachel. "So he betrayed me, and he betrayed Rachel." But more than that, he betrayed himself. And now he thinks he can walk into that ballroom tonight and toast to our daughter's future like nothing is wrong? My voice broke, rising with a new edge of steel. No, not anymore. Rachel nodded, her expression firm. Then we're agreed. Tonight, the truth comes out. No matter how ugly it is, I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, my heart pounding. The question wasn't if we would expose Franklin and Michael. It was how. And once the truth was out, what would it do to our family's name, to Rachel's future, to everything we had built? If this were your family, would you protect the secret to avoid scandal? Or would you expose it no matter the cost? Tell me in the comments. Because the cost of silence was about to become higher than any of us could pay. By late afternoon, the Savannah Yacht Club was a picture out of a Southern lifestyle magazine. White tents rose against the deep blue of the river, strings of lights twinkled like fireflies above rows of tables, and a string quartet tuned their instruments under the shade of an old live oak. Servers hurried between the kitchen and the reception hall. Trays of shrimp and grits, mini crab cakes, and sweet tea cocktails balanced with practiced ease. From the outside, it looked perfect. But on the inside, I was unraveling. I stood near the entrance as guests began to arrive. Women in pastel dresses kissed my cheek and complimented the magnolia centerpieces. Men in seersucker suits clapped Franklin on the back and asked about his latest big deal in Charleston. No one could see the storm beneath my smile. Franklin played the host flawlessly, shaking hands, laughing warmly, tipping the servers with a wink. He looked every bit the successful, devoted husband. Watching him was like watching a stranger in my husband's skin. Then Michael arrived. He looked polished in a tailored navy suit, his tie just the right shade of blue to match Rachel's dress. The crowd admired him. The up-and-coming attorney, the perfect son-in-law. But when his eyes met Franklin's across the lawn, there was a flicker, a spark, that no one else noticed, no one but me. I felt my breath catch in my throat. This was my daughter's fiancé. This was the man she should have trusted to walk beside her into the future. And yet, under the fairy lights and soft music, his gaze found my husband first. Rachel noticed it too. She slipped up beside me, her hand brushing mine. Her expression was calm, but her whisper carried steel. They think they're in control, Mama. Let them laugh. Let them toast. By the end of tonight, everyone will see them for who they really are. Behind us, Aunt Asha moved quietly through the crowd, blending in with the catering staff in a crisp white shirt and black slacks. Her eyes scanned the room, sharp and calculating. She caught my gaze for just a moment and tapped the strap of her crossbody bag. Inside, it was the thumb drive, the evidence. Guests filled the ballroom, their chatter echoing against the high ceilings. At the front of the room, a large projector screen stood ready. On the surface, it was there for a slideshow of baby photos and sweet memories. But I knew better. That screen would become the sword that cut through every lie. I walked the perimeter of the room, greeting guests, keeping my voice steady. Judge Ellison, Michael's mentor, was already at the front table with his wife, nodding in approval at the arrangements. Franklin joined him, laughing as though he hadn't stolen years of my life in secret. When I glanced at Rachel, she was smiling for her friends, posing for pictures by the floral arch. But I could see it in her eyes. Beneath the smile was resolve. She was waiting for the moment. The band began to play softly. The champagne flutes were being filled. Soon the toasts would begin. Soon the projector would flicker to life. And then, as if on cue, Franklin stepped up to the microphone. His voice boomed across the ballroom with practiced warmth. Friends, family, neighbors, thank you for being here to celebrate our daughter Rachel and her wonderful fiancé Michael. Tonight is about love, about family, and about the future. The room erupted in applause. Glasses clinked. Franklin smiled, but beside me, Rachel leaned close. Her whisper chilled my blood. Mama, Asha says there's one more file on that drive, something neither of us has seen yet. My pulse quickened. More files? More secrets? What could possibly be worse than what we already knew? If you were in my shoes, would you risk opening that last unknown file before the reveal? Or wait until everyone was watching? Comment your choice below. Because what was hidden on that thumb drive would change not just the party, but the entire legacy of our family. The ballroom buzzed with polite laughter as Franklin launched into his speech. His voice rolled smooth and easy across the room, like a man with nothing to hide. He toasted Rachel, praised Michael, and thanked the Ellisons for welcoming our family with such warmth. On the surface, everything shimmered with Southern charm. But in the shadows by the catering table, Asha gave Rachel the slightest nod. The thumb drive had been inserted into the AV system. The files were queued. Rachel slipped out with me through a side door into a quiet hallway lined with portraits of yacht club founders. My heels clicked against the polished floor as my nerves rattled. She opened her phone, connected it to the AV folder, and froze. There it is, she whispered. A hidden folder labeled HV Archive. Her thumb hesitated. Do we look now, or wait until the reveal? Now, I said. If there's more, I need to be ready for it. She tapped. The file list opened. Spreadsheets, scanned contracts, and one video. The first document was a ledger. Franklin's withdrawals matched against Michael's deposits, moving in mirrored patterns across months. But some amounts were larger, tens of thousands, and tagged to names I didn't recognize. Rachel scrolled. Politicians, business partners, a federal judge's campaign account, all connected to the same Harborview shell company. This isn't just money, Rachel whispered. It's leverage. He was moving funds that could destroy reputations. My head spun. He wasn't just betraying us. He was gambling with names that could burn down half this city. Then Rachel tapped the video. For a moment, the screen showed static. Then Franklin appeared, seated in a hotel room armchair, speaking into a phone. His voice was low, but the words landed like stones. Michael's good for it. Young, ambitious, hungry. If the board blocks me, he'll hand over the files. They don't want that. They'll fold. I felt my stomach twist. Franklin wasn't just having an affair. He was using my daughter's fiancé as bait in a blackmail scheme. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. Mama, he was trading me, my engagement, my life. As part of his deals, I reached for her trembling hand. For the first time that day, I saw her not just as my daughter, but as a woman fighting to take back her own future. Behind us, a burst of applause echoed through the walls. Franklin's speech was ending. The toasts would begin. Rachel locked eyes with me. We show them everything, not just the affair, not just the money, the blackmail. All of it I swallowed hard. Are you ready for what comes after? Her jaw set. After tonight, there's no going back. But silence is worse than scandal. The hidden file had turned our private nightmare into a public bombshell. This wasn't just betrayal. It was corruption. And we had one chance to show the world the truth. If you had the evidence in your hand, would you show everything? Or would you protect your family name and reveal only part of it? Comment your answer. I need to know what you would do. The crowd erupted again, the sound of shocked voices filling every corner of the ballroom. Michael finally found his voice, though it was weak and cracking. "Rachel, please, it wasn't like that. Don't!" she snapped, her eyes blazing. "Don't say my name! Don't say another word to me." The slides kept coming. Withdrawals from our joint accounts, always in Franklin's hand. Deposits into Michael's, neat as a mirror image. 10,000 here, 8,000 there. A pattern that couldn't be ignored. I rose slowly, my knees trembling but my voice sharp as steel. For 27 years, I was the woman behind Franklin. I balanced the books, paid the bills, held this family together. And this is what he gave back? Theft. Lies. A daughter betrayed, and a marriage burned to ashes. The ballroom fell into stunned silence. Even the quartet in the corner stopped playing, their bows hovering mid-air. Rachel lowered the remote, her hands shaking. The weight of the truth hung between us all. Franklin's mask was cracking, his denials growing weaker. Michael's silence condemning him louder than words ever could. But then Asha stepped forward, the manila envelope in her hands. "There's more," she said, her voice low but steady. "And it doesn't just involve stolen money." The guests turned in their seats, the whispers building again. My heart lurched. More? How much more could there be? If you were Rachel, would you stop here to protect yourself from more humiliation? Or would you keep going until every secret was out in the open? Tell me in the comments. The ballroom was a storm of whispers, but Asha didn't flinch. My sister stood in the middle of the chaos, her catering disguise now useless, the envelope in her hands like a judge's gavel. She waited until the noise dulled into uneasy murmurs, and then her voice cut through the air. "You've seen the affair. You've seen the stolen money. But Franklin's betrayal runs deeper than even that." My chest tightened. "Asha, don't." She shook her head, firm. "Simone, the truth is already here. We can't stop now." Rachel stood frozen beside me, her eyes red from fury, her hands trembling at her sides. "What else could he have possibly done?" she whispered. Asha pulled the papers free from the envelope. A sheet of white, stamped with the seal of a private DNA lab, caught the light of the projector. With one click of the remote, the words blazed across the screen for all to see. Probability of paternity, 99.999%. The room gasped as one. I clutched the edge of the table for support. "No!" The slide shifted, and the image that followed nearly drove the air from my lungs. A teenage girl, maybe 15, stared back from the screen. She had soft brown skin, a wide smile, and eyes so familiar they cut like a knife. Franklin's eyes. "This," Asha said, her voice unwavering, "is Zoe Jenkins, Franklin's daughter. He has been secretly supporting her mother, Nicole Jenkins, for 15 years, funding an entire second life while lying to his wife, and while raising Rachel under the illusion of honesty." The silence shattered. People leapt from their seats, exclamations bouncing against the ballroom's high ceilings. Some covered their mouths with their hands, others pulled out their phones, recording every second of this downfall. I swayed, my mind spinning. My husband, a second daughter, 15 years of lies. Rachel's voice cracked like glass. "You mean all those late nights? The business trips to Charleston? He wasn't at work. He wasn't even with Michael. He was with them?" The words hung in the air, heavy with disgust. A chair screeched as Franklin stood, his face pale and his eyes wild. "Stop this. Simone, don't believe her. Asha has always hated me, you know that. She doctored these papers, Don't you dare," I spat, the steel in my voice surprising even me. "Don't you dare blame my sister for your sins." Franklin opened his mouth again, But another voice rose from the back of the room, clear and strong. "It's true." The crowd turned, a wave of whispers spreading like ripples in a pond. A woman stood just inside the doorway. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pinned back, her face weary but defiant. And beside her was a teenage girl clutching her arm, Zoe. The room erupted. Phones lifted higher, guests whispered frantically. It was one thing to see a photo on a screen, but now here they were in the flesh. Nicole and Zoe, the living proof of Franklin's secret life. Nicole's voice wavered, but her words carried. I kept silent because I thought it was what he wanted. But I won't hide anymore. He is Zoe's father. He has been part of her life since she was a baby, while pretending to be a loyal husband in this house. All eyes turned to Franklin. His mouth worked, but no words came out. For the first time that night, I saw fear in his eyes. Zoe's gaze darted nervously around the room until it landed on me. And there it was. Those same deep, intelligent eyes I had fallen in love with 27 years ago when Franklin first smiled at me. My stomach twisted. This child had done nothing wrong. She was innocent. Yet every time I looked at her, all I could see was betrayal. Rachel's shoulders heaved with angry breaths. So it wasn't enough to humiliate me with Michael. It wasn't enough to steal from Mom. You had to build another family behind our backs? Another daughter? My whole life? A lie? Franklin tried to step toward her. "Rachel, please." She recoiled as though his touch was poison. Don't you dare come near me." The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some openly shaking their heads. The man they had once admired, the charming Franklin Whitfield, husband, father, businessman, was now revealed as a liar, a thief, and a coward. I drew a sharp breath, straightening my spine. For 27 years, you let me believe I was enough. You let me sacrifice for this family, pour my life into building it. And the entire time, you had a child living just a few miles away. My voice broke, but I steadied it. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed her. You betrayed Rachel. You betrayed Zoe too. Franklin's eyes flickered to Zoe, and for a second, his expression softened. But it was too late. No glance could undo 15 years of deceit. Nicole stepped forward, her hand resting on Zoe's shoulder. "I kept your secret, Franklin." I raised her quietly. "But I won't let Zoe feel like a dirty secret anymore. She deserves to be seen." The weight of her words pressed down on me. My chest ached. Zoe was innocent, yes. But she was also a living, breathing reminder that my marriage had been a fraud for over a decade. Rachel turned to me, her eyes glistening. "Mama, what do we do now?" The question cut deep. Do I embrace Zoe, the child my husband hid from me? Do I shield her from the shame that wasn't hers to carry? Or do I step back, knowing that every glance at her would reopen the wound Franklin carved into my soul? The room waited. 100 pairs of eyes, 100 phones recording, capturing not just Franklin's downfall, but my decision. Franklin's secret was no longer hidden. His daughter stood in the doorway, undeniable proof of his double life. My marriage was in ruins, my daughter's future in pieces, and now I faced a choice that could define everything that came next. If you were in my place, would you embrace Zoe as part of your family? Or would the reminder of betrayal be too painful to bear? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your truth. For a heartbeat, the ballroom held its breath. On the screen, Zoe's photo faded to black. The reflections of 100 upturned faces floated in the glossy surface like ghosts. Then the whispers surged back, sharp, darting, relentless, as if the room itself had decided to pass judgment. Franklin's chair scraped backward, a jagged sound. His face, once the practiced mask of a genial host, was chalk white, his eyes desperate. "This is over," he hissed, more to himself than to us. "I'm not doing this circus." He turned toward the nearest side door, shoulders squared, the old swagger trying to reassemble itself. Asha moved before anyone else, calm, precise. She stepped from the aisle, her catering jacket long abandoned, and planted herself between Franklin and the exit. "Not yet," she said, voice level. "You don't get to choose when the truth ends." He tried to push past. She didn't touch him. She didn't need to. Her stare was a locked door. Behind her, a few yacht club staff shifted uncertainly, then stilled as the crowd's attention swung like a spotlight. I stepped forward, my voice carrying even over the murmurs. "Franklin." Just his name. He froze. "You can run," I said quietly, "but you already arrived at the destination." He swallowed hard, jaw working. "Simone, please." He glanced toward the main entrance, then toward Michael. For the briefest second, their eyes met, an entire history compressed into a single brittle glance. Michael looked like a man who had lost the script he'd spent months rehearsing. Rachel, my daughter, raised the remote again. Her hand trembled and then steadied. The screen brightened. "This next part," she said, voice flinty with hurt, "isn't about who you love or who you lied to. It's about what you did to our family's future and to the law." She clicked. Spreadsheets replaced faces. Clean rows, cold math. Franklin Whitfield, loan against 401k. Signature, Simone Whitfield, false. Timestamps, branch footage stills from the Bull Street location. Franklin alone, jacket off, signing documents he had no right to sign. Gasps rolled like thunder. Someone near the front whispered, "Forgery!" and the word seemed to tint the air. Rachel clicked again. Harborview Development Partners, LLC, DE. A flowchart bloomed across the screen. Moneyline after moneyline, arrows from Franklin's withdrawals to Harborview, then onward. Consulting, third-party review, expedite fees, toward accounts tied to Michael Bennett. A rustle swept through a cluster of attorneys at a side table. One of them bowed his head, pressing 2 fingers to the bridge of his nose. Michael's mouth opened, closed. That isn't what it looks like," he croaked. "Those were reimbursements," Franklin insisted. Rachel cut him off. "And this is you," she said, clicking again. A close-up still. Michael at his desk, the polished Cartier face gleaming on his wrist. The caption below, "Paid same day from Harborview pass-through." The room exhaled, one shocked, disgusted breath. Asha stepped to the screen's edge, her voice crisp. "There's more." She tapped her phone. "Metadata from invoice edits at Lowndes and Rowe." A slide appeared. Revision logs with user, M. Bennett, timestamps past midnight, and memo lines silently altered from internal markup to external review. Small words, big consequences. Then a table of client escrow totals and Harborview transfers that should never have touched each other. A murmur from the 4th row turned into a ripple. 2 partners from Michael's firm stared, stony-faced, at the screen. One of them typed something furiously on his phone. The other stood, scanning the room like a man bracing for a wave he could not stop. Michael's composure splintered. "Those weren't my edits," he said too quickly. "Anyone could have. Kara handles the—" Asha's brow didn't move. "Kara sent the thumb drive," she said. "She brought the receipts." Silence. Then, somewhere in the back, a champagne flute tipped and shattered. The sound rang like a bell. Franklin made one last lunge toward the door. This time, he didn't find Asha blocking him. He found Rachel. She didn't touch him either. She just stepped into his way and lifted her chin. Under the string lights, she looked like every version of herself that he had gambled and spent. A little girl with skinned knees, a valedictorian at a lectern, a woman who had dressed for an engagement party and found a battlefield. "Dad," she said, voice low. "If you leave now, you leave as a coward. Stay, face what you built." For an instant, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Pride, shame, grief, I couldn't tell. Then it was gone. He pivoted hard, shouldered through a cluster of guests, and crashed out the side door into humid night. The door banged back on its hinges. The quartet in the corner lowered their bows and stared. A beat of stunned quiet, and then a new presence filled the doorway by the main entrance. 2 uniformed officers from Chatham County and a plainclothes detective with a clipped badge. The murmur rose and then thinned to a taut thread. Even the air seemed to wait. The detective spoke calmly, voice carrying without strain. "We're here to speak with Mr. Michael Bennett regarding questions of wire fraud, misappropriation of client funds, and conspiracy. Mr. Bennett, would you accompany us?" Michael's head jerked toward the partners from his firm. They didn't move. One of them stared at the floor. The other stared at Michael, expression unreadable and cold. Michael tried a smile that didn't land. "Detective, this is a misunderstanding. I'm happy to clear it up privately." He glanced toward the side door, as if it might open and give him a way out of the frame. Asha's voice, soft as a blade. "Privately is how this started." The detective's hand hovered near his belt, not threatening, simply inevitable. "Sir?" Michael lifted his palms, a lawyer remembering the choreography of compliance. "I'll come," he said. "But I want to be very clear. None of this proves theft. These could be drafts, mock-ups, educational samples for junior staff. That shell company? Rachel clicked again. The video played, the one from the hidden folder. Franklin's voice. "If the board blocks me, he'll hand over the files." "They don't want that." "They'll fold." The room didn't gasp this time. It just listened. Then another clip, Kara's sworn note scrolling alongside. "User M. Bennett exported invoice batches to external drive, passed to Harborview, then re-imported altered memos as if third-party proofed Michael's shoulders sagged, as if someone had cut the strings holding him upright. The detective nodded once to the officers. "Mr. Bennett," he said evenly, "we're going to step outside." The officers flanked him, not dragging, not shoving, simply escorting. As they reached the threshold, Michael twisted back toward Rachel. For a fleeting second, his face was an open book. Fear, anger, a flash of something that looked like apology, and then curdled into self-pity. He opened his mouth. Rachel turned away. He went out into the warm Savannah night. The hush he left behind was stranger than the noise had been. It felt like a vacuum, pulling at edges, begging to be filled with anything other than what had just happened. Judge Ellison, silent until now, rose stiffly, his wife's hand on his sleeve. He cleared his throat, but whatever he had planned to say withered at the looks that met him. He sat again, gaze fixed on the tablecloth, the small stitched anchors wobbling in his vision. At the back of the room, Nicole shifted as if to leave. Zoe didn't move. Her eyes were on me, wide, raw, asking a question no child should have to ask a stranger who is also somehow family. Is there a place for me in the wreckage? I walked toward her without quite remembering telling my feet to move. The path between tables felt like a long, bright corridor where 1,000 small decisions had brought us here. When I reached them, I looked from Nicole to Zoe and back. "This isn't your shame," I said, voice steady now. "Either of you." Nicole nodded, a brittle breath escaping. I know, she said, though the words looked heavy. I should have. Earlier. I didn't want to blow up your life. I told myself I was protecting Zoe. Maybe I was protecting myself. Zoe's fingers tightened around the strap of her small purse. I didn't ask for any of this, she whispered. I know, I said, and I did, with a clarity that hurt. Behind me, Rachel's heels clicked across the parquet. She arrived at my shoulder, tears making her eyes shine but not fall. She looked at Zoe the way a woman looks at a mirror that shows a different possible life. Then she nodded, one time, a small bow that somehow felt like courage. We're not going to scream at you, Rachel said to Zoe. We're just figuring out how to do this without lying. Asha stood a few feet away, giving us the space a good protector gives, scanning the room out of habit and love. The projector idled on a blank slide, whirring softly like a heartbeat calming down. Someone coughed. Glass chimed. A thread of conversation eased into the air. The party was over, but the people were still here, and people don't vanish neatly just because a fairy tale burns down. They gather coats. They whisper. They decide who they will be tomorrow when this becomes a story they tell. I turned back toward the front, where the toast flutes waited, untouched. 100 tiny vessels for a future no one would drink. On the lectern lay my note cards, the ones I had written this morning with phrases like love endures and families blend. I folded them once, twice, again, until the paper softened and fit into my palm like something I could let go. The side door creaked. For a moment, every head lifted, expecting Franklin to slink back in with an apology rehearsed on the walkway. It wasn't him. A yacht club manager entered quietly, spoke to Asha in a low voice, then slipped back out. Asha approached us. Police have eyes on Franklin's car leaving the lot, she said, tone purely informational. They're not stopping him tonight. This is civil for you for now. Divorce, restitution, fraud complaints. Michael's situation, she glanced toward the door. That's criminal. Separate tracks. We'll run both. I nodded. The words felt like architecture. Not warm, not cold. Useful. Rachel exhaled. I don't want this to be the only thing people remember about me, she said softly. Not the girl whose father and fiancé. She couldn't finish the sentence. I put my arm around her shoulders and drew her in. You won't be, I said. Not if we decide to write the rest. Across the room, a few guests began to leave, slowly in clumps, as if tearing themselves away from the gravity of the moment required teamwork. Others stayed, offering a squeeze of the hand, a murmured, "We love you," a casserole already mentally scheduled for tomorrow. Savannah can be a town of gossip, yes, but also a town of people who show up with pound cake when your life splits, even if they talked about it on the group text first. The projector's blue glow painted the front of the room in a quiet light. I walked to the lectern and clicked it off. Darkness folded gently around the dais, and the string lights took over, soft and human. I looked at Rachel, then at Zoe, then at Nicole, then at Asha. 4 women in different orbits around the same collapsed star, deciding whether to be pulled in or to become something new. Let's go home, I said. Not his home, ours. We gathered our things. As we passed the floral arch that had been built for photographs, magnolias and roses woven into a promise that would never be kept. Rachel reached up and plucked a single bloom. She tucked it behind Zoe's ear. The girl startled, then smiled, quick and shy, like sunshine peeking through a summer storm. At the threshold, I turned back one last time. The ballroom looked almost beautiful again in the hush, like a stage after the actors have left, the set briefly believing it is the world it pretended to be. Outside, The July air wrapped around us, thick with river and jasmine. Far off, down on Victory Drive, a siren wailed and faded. The city went on. We stepped into it. Franklin fled into the night. Michael walked out between two officers. In the quiet that followed, it fell to us to decide what our next chapter would be. Divorce papers and restitution, yes, but also something harder. Whether to make room for Zoe and how to rebuild without lies. If this were your family, what would you do tomorrow morning? File first or reach out first? To a lawyer? To a therapist? To Zoe? Tell me your move in the comments. The streets of Savannah were hushed when we left the yacht club. The air was thick with magnolia and jasmine, but to me, it felt like we were stepping out of one world and into another. Rachel leaned against the car, bouquet crumpled in her hands. Zoe stood off to the side, nervous, unsure if she belonged. Nicole's hand hovered protectively over her daughter's shoulder, as if bracing for rejection. I looked at all of them and said softly, "We've lost so much tonight. A husband, a father, a fiancé. But maybe we've gained a chance to build something new. Something honest." Rachel wiped her eyes. "I don't want this night to define me. I don't want to be remembered as the woman they betrayed. I want to be stronger than that." Zoe's voice was small but steady. "And I don't want to be a mistake. I just want to know my family." I met her eyes. "You're not a mistake, Zoe. Your family." Nicole let out a long breath, tears slipping free. "Thank you," she whispered. Rachel pressed her wilted flower into Zoe's hand. "Sisters fight, sisters forgive, but sisters are family." Zoe clutched it, her face breaking into a shy, grateful smile. For the first time all night, hope stirred inside me. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Franklin vanished into the shadows, his career destroyed, his charm spent. He tried to reach me once with a text. "I'm sorry. Please talk to me." I never answered. Some wounds didn't deserve words. Michael's downfall was louder. His arrest filled the Savannah papers. A once promising lawyer now disgraced. His name scrubbed from the firm's doors. His reputation ruined. Rachel's healing took longer. The betrayal had cut her deepest, and some nights she cried until her voice was hoarse. But therapy and faith helped her steady. She began volunteering at a women's shelter downtown, turning her pain into purpose. Watching her transform gave me hope for her future. And Zoe? She became a part of us, carefully at first. Coffee dates, awkward dinners, then naturally. Soon, she and Rachel laughed together in the kitchen, swapped clothes, argued over movies. She wasn't Franklin's secret anymore. She was my daughter's sister. She was ours. Nicole, too, found space at the table. She admitted her part in keeping Zoe hidden, but she'd chosen her daughter over deception, and that counted for something. Slowly, she became an ally. My dear friends, if you've stayed until now, thank you. You've walked with me through betrayal and lies, but you've also seen that even the hardest truth is better than the prettiest lie. We lost everything that night, our illusions, our so-called perfect family. But what rose in its place was real, honest, whole in a way it never was before. Have you ever had to rebuild from ashes? Have you ever lost what you thought was your world, only to find something stronger waiting? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this journey touched you, please subscribe. Join this community. Because here, we remind each other that the truth may hurt, but it also heals. Stay strong, stay honest, and never forget, you are not alone.